WLRN Video presents.
Hello everyone, this is Emiliann Lorenzen. I spoke with Jeanette Cooper from Partners for Ethical Care about being one of the speakers for Courage Calls to Courage on April 23rd in Madison, Wisconsin. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is Emiliann Lorenzen, and I'm here with Jeanette Cooper. And you are a founding member of the Partners of Ethical Care?
Partners for Ethical Care, yeah.
Yeah. And so tell me about yourself a little bit, how you got involved with Partners for Ethical Care.
Yeah, I'll go a little bit further from earlier from that. So I used to take my daughter to the Michigan Women's Music Festival from the time she was like 2. Mm-hmm. She's 15 and a half now. So she came every summer with me. I was a craftswoman, and it was a life-changing experience for sure. If any women have been there, really an amazing place to kind of see yourself in a bunch of different iterations and time periods in your life, kind of walking humanly in front of you, which is pretty great. Mm-hmm. And I loved having my daughter there. She loved the freedom, she would just kind of wander around. So she kind of grew up understanding the variety of women that exists, and how you can embody kind of femaleness in a bunch of different ways and have different personalities and thoughts and, appearances and all kinds of things. So I really loved that about my experience as a mom, being able to have that with her. So I got involved with Partners for Ethical Care, and we founded Partners for Ethical Care. This was in October, November of 2020, when we saw, there's a few of us who were interested in this. What we saw was this particular niche, nobody was really addressing the issue of children and the social and medical transition of children through the affirmation model. So we were interested in very narrowly talking about that. And there were, a handful of us interested in doing that. And we still maintain that same mission. We haven't really expanded or anything. It's a pretty narrow mission, to be honest. And we're kind of focused on two things. We both want to bring awareness to this, with the ultimate goal of, once people are kind of aware, as they become aware, then we move towards supporting efforts to stop the affirmation model of care around transgender identified children.
Okay. And so do you have a trans identified child in your life? Like, how did you get involved?
Yeah. It's interesting when I hear, sometimes in gender critical circles, actually, I hear people say, well, if this parent is to blame for their child being trans identified because they didn't instill a belief of what the child could be and become. And I think I'm kind of the example of the ways that you can do pretty much everything right that is under your control and still end up with a transgender identified child. Because there's lots of things that children have to gain socially from being transgender identified. So it is very complicated standing in their shoes, thinking about the reasons why this is beneficial to them kind of socially, I think. So yeah, I do. And she's 15 and a half now. My story, it's been 2.5 years since she was transgender identified. And my story will come out probably in the next week or two from Partners for Ethical Care. It's pretty long. It involves the family court system. So it's very complicated. I think I'm now reaching the end of the family court system, but I have no custody of her. I have no visitation. I have no medical or educational decision-making. She doesn't want anything medical. Even though my parenting agreement has a clause that states that there has to be a court order for anything medical, she doesn't actually want any of that. I never thought that she did. to be honest. We had a bit of a household of kind of being fine with our bodies, similar to Fest. So I don't think she really ever had kind of a hatred about her body any more extreme, or even, I would say, under average, like below average of the regular adolescent girl. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of, like I said, social aspect to that.
Okay, so that your story will be published on Partners for Ethical Care.
Yeah, we'll do it on the blog, and then we'll record it for the Witness podcast. We have a volunteer who does the Witness podcast, and I think I'll be the one who reads my own story, which is pretty rare. Basically, nobody reads their own stories. We have a group of volunteers who read, and we get a lot of training. The person who produces that podcast is kind of a director producer. So she teaches us a lot about, the way that we're speaking and how to give emphasis and different things, which is pretty awesome. She'd never done a podcast before she started that one. So that's amazing what somebody can do. Yeah, my story will come out, but because it involves a lot of different things, it involves the family court system. It involves the way that family court isn't really the right mechanism to talk about these issues. Really, they have a philosophy of the best interest of the child, which is pretty subjective.
Right.
So it's hard to really understand what would be in the best interest of the child long-term. And I don't think the family court system is set up to think about children long-term, especially when it's so jammed with a bunch of cases and things going on in it. So I think the family court system really is meant to work on a very short-term basis. And I think that's how it is acting, particularly in my case. But what it also does in that is it creates long-term damage, because I'm completely alienated from my daughter. I've seen her 8 times in 2.5 years. So, a total of, I don't know, handful of hours, less than 10 hours.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That must be really difficult.
Parents kind of go through this, and I'm going to talk about this in my talk in Madison, but parents kind of go through stages. Well, they kind of should go through stages, right? Of emotions, where we start out, at least I started out, especially because my daughter went on a visit to her dad's, like a regular custodial weekly kind of time, and never came back. So it wasn't, and then she came out as trans. So it's a bit of a different story, where I really felt like I got hit on the back of the head with a 2x4. I would say, quite disoriented. I've actually had a concussion before, and I would say that they were nearly the same physical feeling of that. So there is like this disorientation, and then it moves toward kind of like how did this happen? And part of that is looking at yourself. How did I allow this to happen to my child? Why is she kind of turning into this different person? Or why is she kind of problem solving in this way? And then I look at the child, and how can you do this to me? and then you remember, like, your child isn't doing anything to you. Mm-hmm. They're not. They're trying to survive in a very complex social system, and they're just trying to survive in their life. So then it's easier to have a lot more compassion for your child. And then you kind of look around the spheres of the child. Okay, what's the social environment of the child? What's the school, or all the things around the child? And then once you get, well, how did the school get those materials? Or how did that club, have these mixed age people in it? Like, I didn't know that, or whatever it is. Things that you thought were progressive and awesome turn into be like, wait, I didn't think that's what you were talking about. My child was the head of the GSA, and I was super proud of her. Right. And now I just feel like stabbing myself in the eye for that. It's crazy. So then, you come to this kind of like, wow, there's a giant system that's kind of producing, content, and making schools into rather than reproducing what's happening in society, they're producing something that they want to happen in society, which is a very liberal and progressive idea. But some things you really don't want produced on mass scale. So, I think I learned quite a bit, and now you have some grounding as a parent after that whole process of introspection and reflection on yourself. What are the things? Why am I feeling this way? What kind of things are from my own childhood that make me feel this way? Because it's not all of our feelings are not based upon the thing that's right in front of us. Much of them are based on our childhood. So a lot of that self-reflection as a parent is really, really helpful. So I feel like I've gained a lot through this process. And that's kind of how we want, parents to grow, so that then they can get to the place that they're able to really take on activism, like Partners for Ethical Care, or anything else that they feel is part of kind of taking down the gender industry. But we want them to do it not as a distraction from the things, their personal kind of stuff that they probably need to work through, whether that's from childhood or a relationship or something else. But they come to activism because they've gone through kind of a healing process in their own selves.
Yeah, that sounds like a really healthy approach to helping parents and getting them involved.
Yeah, I mean, people can grow, and it's pretty great. I mean, we're like, human beings are never done. Like, we're always in a state of becoming, and that's super exciting. I think. I mean, it's like living multiple lives. I feel like a cat.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so you're going to be speaking at the Courage Calls to Courage event in Madison, Wisconsin. So why do you think Madison and Wisconsin, or the Midwest in general, is a great place to have these conversations?
Well, I think what's interesting about the Midwest is they don't like to create a lot of waves, even though we have obviously the Great Lakes, which I don't want to say. That's major. It's major. But they don't like controversy that much, I think, in the Midwest. But it is a place that you can have good discussions with people. I think that the Midwest is kind of known for being nice. Like really nice and hardworking. And I feel like that kind of embodies the things that we need to be doing right now, is having real conversations as human beings, kind of human beings as in creatures in the universe and living, breathing things. And the Midwest is kind of known for its farming culture. So I like the idea of doing that in the Midwest. I think we just did, and we're still in the process of kind of trying to get House Bill 454 in Ohio, the Save Adolescents from Experimentation Act, passed. It would stop kind of the social transition at school and the medical transition happening in children's hospitals in Ohio. And in the Midwest is a great spot for that. People like to kind of have calm conversations. It's not a place for extremeness. So I think it's a good place to sit down and talk.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what do you think of the extremity in Madison, where it's kind of a TRA town? Do you think that has to do with, I mean, I don't really know much about Madison, Wisconsin, so maybe you could shed some light on maybe why that area would become captured? Yeah,
I think that can be true. What we have to remember, though, is that the vast majority of people agree with us. Mm-hmm. They agree. They know what biological sex is. So there is some times, obviously, at which they are like, insecurity brings about a defensiveness that becomes yelling and shouting.
Right.
People who are deeply secure generally aren't yelling at people.
Yeah.
And they're generally not fighting all the time. So I think that Madison offers an opportunity for the quiet to be spoken, because we know that people agree. We know that people understand that, children are important and that women are important. And it opens up a space to really have somebody else say something that you think too, and walk up to them afterward, be like, I've been scared to say this,
Yeah.
but I agree with what you're saying. And those connections that people make in person, it's amazing. Like coming together as human beings and talking to each other and seeing people's faces. I love that. I really do.
It's amazing.
You are listening to WLRN.
So when you talk at the library, you already kind of mentioned what you're going to talk about, but are you going to be focusing on like parent activism or?
Well, I think I'm in a unique spot because I see the lineup of people and I'm like, I feel like I accidentally got picked or something, like my name is messed up with somebody else's. Seriously. So, I feel like I got to step it up, which is what I'm saying, to meet the demand here, the threshold of quality. But no, I think with the people who are there, I think I have this blend that I think is necessary to talk about, which is that basis in radical feminism and sisterhood. And that idea that every woman is my sister and every girl is my little sister. And that I'm not a mother unless I'm female. Right. So that is the thread that is binding all of us in the whole thing. So I think me as a parent is somewhat, in some ways, secondary to the way that I am a woman. But so there's a responsibility for me to all women and all little sisters out there, including, my own girl. But that our responsibility as mothers is quite gigantic. And I think there are ways that we can do good things for the world as moms. So I want to talk about kind of having compassion for all the mothers, not just the ones who we feel like we agree with, who are doing the things that we're like, yeah, that's good that you're doing what I think is good. But have compassion for the women who are doing things that we kind of wonder, like, why would you do that? Like, what would make you do that? What would make you, socially or medically transition your child? Like, I don't understand that. Really, curiosity is what I'm hoping to inspire from women, is a curiosity about what would make someone do that. What is it about kind of the big patriarchal structure that mothers are living in that would make them do that? There must be something. And so it really calls upon us to be curious about that and compassionate for them so that we can then have conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it sounds like you've been involved in the women's movement for quite some time. So where do you feel like the women's movement is at right now? And what do you think is needed moving forward?
It's hard because I feel like really young. I'm only 44 and I feel like a really young person to be able to answer that question because I don't have the long view. Like this past summer when I was at Big Mouth Girl on the land, I was talking to lots of older women about, like, for instance, Lynette. I talked to her for a while from LGB Alliance USA, and Lynette, right? Yeah. Lynette. So I just talking to older women in general about what they've seen, because they're 20, 30 years older than I am, and they can see a longer view. And in some ways I don't feel like I can see that. But what I want to see is kind of where I thought we were heading, actually, toward some sort of social environment where girls could be strong and they were just girls. I mean, I know we have this love-hate relationship with the word tomboy because we don't like to be called boys. But I miss those butch girls, right? I miss them. And sometimes, I'm such like I'm like a fish. So I kind of, depending on the situation, I have different, ways that I don't know, present. I don't really use that word. Depends on the circumstance, but I think, there's a lot we don't know about where it's going to go. There's wishes that I have for girls in the world to just be. I don't know how else to say that.
Right. Yeah. Just be themselves.
Just to be without, and that's an impossible task because we live in a social, everybody lives in like a social environment where they both change the environment and are changed by it. But I hope that there's just a little bit more space for them to change it in good ways and be changed by it in good ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the talk, Courage Calls to Courage at the library, it's preceded by Sisters for Sisters, which is kind of like a weekend event.
Yeah.
With speakers and, workshops and sisterhood.
Yeah.
Will you also be at the Sisters for Sisters event?
Yes. Oh yeah. I just hope it doesn't snow because, it can really snow anywhere up to June. Even though I like snow, I'm in Chicago. So like, really, it's the same, more or less. So yeah, I'm excited. And that's the thing. It's the informal time that we all talk to each other and we meet new people. And somebody says, one of the best things, that I experience kind of every time I go somewhere is I meet somebody who says, I was scared to come here because I didn't know anybody. And then you say, it's so good. It's wow, that's amazing. Who does that? How brave, like truly brave to like go to a space where you're just thinking, I think I might have I think kind of what they think, and I want to hear what they're saying and I want to meet them. And then you find out that everybody you're talking to is a human being. And that's so awesome. So it's those informal things that I'm really excited about.
Great.
Maybe I like people more than other people like people.
Well, it's different being in an environment of like-minded women, and it's not threatening. It's just...
Oh my God, it's totally different to live like that. Right. We have parent groups that meet up in various cities and stuff. And like tomorrow, so I'm in Chicago, but I'm meeting up with the Indiana group near Indianapolis. And it's amazing to watch parents when we come together, and it's like all the weight comes off and you're able to talk, and you don't have this fearfulness that you're going to slip up and say, I don't know, something. Right. It's really freeing. It's a feeling that kind of reminds me of when I first went to Fest, or as the years kind of went by and I could say, oh my gosh, I know why I feel so good here. Like, it's like being weightless. Yeah.
So how do you recommend women who are watching this or listening to this support Sisters for Sisters and Courage Calls to Courage?
Okay, well, they should figure out how they want to do their weekend, because there's like a lot of things to like choose from. But I think they should probably get in, like, send an email, make sure that they kind of get into the group to be able to ride share and all that stuff. I think that's like road tripping is half of it. That's the fun. And then organize with other women. I think that sometimes people think of any event as being outside of their price range, but to be honest, this is the sharing culture, right? This is the culture of sisterhood where we share what we have. And I always tell people, I can't cook anything, so please do not depend on me for your sustenance. I can provide something else, but not food. And we can all provide different stuff. So I think if people are like, oh, that sounds interesting, but I'm not sure, just stop it. That sounds interesting, and say, I'm going to figure this out, because other people will help you figure it out. Other women are going to help you. So you don't have to do it all yourself. You'll ask a question, people respond, and you'll figure it out, and it'll be totally worth it. So I think whatever time that people can spend doing that and spending together in sisterhood, I think that's kind of life-changing. It really kind of fills up your cup. so that you can kind of go back into the world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And is there anything else you'd like to add about anything, Partners for Ethical Care or the weekend?
Well, there's a few cool things. I was going to say we're doing a couple things. I want to say two things. One, for Partners for Ethical Care, I'm running what's called the Ladies Letter Writing League, and it's a volunteer group. So we encourage anyone who identifies as a lady. There are some men who volunteer to help with the writing. And so what we do is we're trying to connect people who have stories, things that have happened that they find are wrong. They shouldn't be happening, whether that's in a school, in a doctor's office, a therapist's office, something that they feel is unethical or illegal, violates some sort of, code or something. But to be honest, that's a traumatizing experience to have. So it's difficult to write those stories. So what we do is try to pair up, or maybe have 2 or 3 people talk to that person, hear them, really give them a space to share. And maybe that comes originally from like a post on Twitter, where you see a post on Twitter and you go, oh my God, that's wrong. That's wrong. That should not be happening. And then you reach out to that person and you go, hey, I want to help you with this. I think this should be reported, and not leave it to the person to do it. Because when you ask a person to do that, it's another re-traumatization of what happened to them. Mm. So what Ladies Letter Writing League is trying to do is to bridge that right there, to be able to write formal complaints to universities, to schools, to all kinds of we just finished one for a pediatrician. So we're trying to bridge that gap so that we can get those formal complaints to licensing boards, and other boards, ethics boards, so that people can be reported for the things that they're doing that are unethical.
Well, that sounds really
that documentation is super important, because we have legislators in states who will say this isn't happening.
Right. Yeah.
And we can tell stories all day long, very, very important to tell our stories, but formal documentation is a whole nother piece that has to be done. And it requires people to help each other and work in collaboration. That's something that we learn as radical feminists, to work in collaboration in order to gain, serious power. So I'm trying to use that model of collaboration within the Ladies Letter Writing League.
Great.
Yeah. The second thing, just briefly, I wanted to mention is I have a Facebook page and website called Dear Daughter Love Mom. And it's really letters to our daughters and our sons from this character mom, which is maybe me sometimes, but isn't always me. And it's really letters kind of expanding and exploring the possibilities of womanhood and manhood and what that can be. And that was really a processing exercise for me, to think about how I envision a world for children and what I want for them. And that speaks to your question that you asked me earlier about where do I see the women's movement going? And part of it is, where do I see mothers in that? So Dear Daughter Love Mom really encompasses that, I think.
That's so interesting, because I've seen Dear Daughter Love Mom.
Oh, really?
And I had no idea it was you.
I'm Mom!
That's cool.
Yeah. I love it. And, the first series was Dear Daughter Love Mom, and it's in a book. Like, I have a book that I, publish all those letters in. I haven't published the Dear Son one yet. And the way that I did that, might seem creepy to people, but the way that I did that is I talked to men about their experiences as boys, and asked them all kinds of things, like how they felt about different body parts, and how they felt about their female teachers, and how they felt about their male teachers, and all different kinds of things about their dads, their moms, their siblings, and their lives in general. And then I wrote the series. I wanted to write the Dear Son series in a way that was not what a mom wishes to tell a son, but what a son wishes to hear from his mother, which is different. So I hope I did the best that I could with that series. I'll never be a boy. I'll never be a man. So it's really the best that I can do. And then I have started a series, and it's kind of hard. So there is a whole series of letters, which is a reconciliation, somewhat of a reconciliation between teenage daughter and mom. And part of that is also like a processing of how do you have this typical adolescent girl mom conflict, and where does it come out? How does it come out? What happens in that? And how do you get to a place that is at least neutral?
Yeah.
So that's the series I'm working on. And then after that, I kind of want to do like a dear body part series, like dear eyebrows, because I have a lot of feelings about my eyebrows. But I want to do a series on like, well, I could say dear appendix, because I don't have one anymore. And it would kind of be a, I don't know what, something like a goodbye. Like it was nice to be with you for a period of time. But I'm thinking about how we think about our bodies and how they function, and like, what do we love, hate about them? I wrote one letter about breasts, and it went on for, oh my gosh, it went on for probably 4 pages. And I said, this is like a book, so I can't do it anymore. When I write those series, I go to like a cabin, not in Wisconsin, although I will consider it. Go to a cabin. I write from morning until I've written maybe 45 letters.
Wow.
Like I shut off my phone. I shut everything. I just sit there and write. And then after that, the next day I start choosing, editing out the different ideas and putting them in order and all of that. It's really awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like a really awesome project.
Yeah. And you can call me mom. now that you know who I am.
Oh yeah, it's mom.
Yeah. Look, it's mom. Yeah. Yeah. Right, it's shorter than my real name, Jeanette. So
true.
I could change it. And then everybody would have to call me mom, including my trans-identified daughter.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. It's really nice meeting you, Mom.
Thank you. You can call me Jeanette, really. Yeah. And I know we were supposed to talk for like 10 minutes, and I'm glad that we got to a solid 45. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this interview with Jeanette Cooper. For more information about Partners for Ethical Care, go to partnersforethicalcare.com. Jeanette will be speaking at Courage Calls to Courage, and go to Eventbrite for more information. There is a link in the description box. For more information about Sisters for Sisters, go to sistersforsisters2022.com. Purchase your ticket before they sell out. You can also buy some merchandise or make a donation. We hope to see you in Madison. Visit womensliberationradionews.com for our monthly podcast, interviews, and articles. Thank you for supporting independent, radical feminist, and lesbian feminist media.